Hello, lifelong learner and deep thinker. Today's video, we are going to use Heptabase to talk about the Ryan Holiday note card system, the key for remembering, organizing, and using everything that you read. Now, what to expect. We're going to talk about who it's for, what it is, and the process of the system, and then also how I would implement this system inside of Heptabase. I've taken some of the portions of the article that I read regarding his system. This is on his site. I'll link the URL below if you want to check it out for yourself. But I've taken some portions of this article that he wrote about this system, placed it inside of Heptabase, inside these sections. Who is it for? What is it? What is it? And then also how to achieve it in Heptabase. The way that this is set up is I have these that are in quotations are the article portions. And I have sometimes taken some of the text and with progressive summarization, I've bolded what stood out to me. And then I have created in green here some thoughts based on that to help us understand who it's for, what it is, and how to implement in Heptabase. Okay. Let's start with who is this for? Now he writes in the article, this isn't the perfect system. It might not work for you. All I can say is that since learning about it 7 years ago, it has totally transformed my process and drastically increased my creative output. It's responsible for helping me publish 3 books in 3 years, along with other books that I've had the privilege of contributing to, write countless articles published in newspapers and websites, and then send out my reading recommendations every month, and make all sorts of other work and personal successes possible. Now, what it boils down to is if your goal is to increase your creative output, then this system might do the trick, right? If you want to be prolific in your creative expression, this system is something you should check out and something you should consider. Ryan Holiday is just a beast when it comes to creativity and releasing work. I want to pause just for a moment here and give you a free gift for hanging out with me today. This is a short PDF guide on how to get insights from the nonfiction books that you read and that you love into your PKM system. By the end of this guide, you'll have a simple system for highlighting your books, a mindful approach for adding content to your PKM system or PKM Notes app, a process for creating building blocks of knowledge for the future, and then a simple tip for making more connections between your notes. The link to the free guide is in the description below. All right, now let's talk about what is the system, the note card system. Here he says, if I have a thought, I write it down on a 4x6 note card and identify it with a theme, or if I am working on a specific project, where it would fit in the project. This may sound familiar with Tiago Forte's para system, right? A theme would be, equate to a life area, right? An area of responsibility. Project is, of course, something that you're working on right now. It has a timeline, a deadline, So here we have cards are categorized by theme and by project. And if it's a project that you are putting this card with, then you can actually put where in the project it should go, right? So if it's a book that you're writing with Ryan Holiday's example, it may be like, this should be a part of the intro, or this should be a part of this particular chapter or whatever. Let's take a look at something else. He says, so those are the kinds of notes that I write to myself. Either sentences in my own writing, words I like, questions I have, or examples I think might fit somewhere and want to learn more about. What this spoke to me is that this system is for the now and for the next, right? It's for the current projects and interests that you have and for future projects and interests. He also answers the question, what can be on the note card, right? Sentences in your own writing, your version of whatever you just read or your thoughts. Words that you like. It's kind of hard to grasp in a digital system, just writing one word on a card, because in a digital system, a single card, in Heptabase can be like almost literally like a whole article, or like even maybe a book. And some of these note-taking apps, we have the ability to write a whole bunch of different stuff on one card or one page. I like that Heptabase named the individual notes that we take cards. Like, think of it as a note card, right? And so what I try to do is, with every card, imagine it being a physical 3x5 index card, 4x6 index card, whatever, with limited space, right? And so I'm not trying to write a whole book inside of a card. I'm trying to get a single idea, a single word or a phrase on the card. So you have words you like, and then there's quotes from other people, questions that you have. This is a good one as well. When you're writing things down, to not only write what other people write down, but write the questions that you have. And then stories or analogies that might fit into a project or a theme. Okay, so we've talked about what goes on the cards. We've talked about categorization of the cards. And now let's talk about the actual process here. This is where he talks about that. The key to this system is the ritual. Read a book or an article and diligently mark the passages and portions that stand out to you. If you have a thought, write it down on the page. This is called marginalia. Fold the bottom of the corner. Basically, mark the page, right? Now, after you've read the book and marked it up, a few weeks later, you return to it and transfer those notes and thoughts onto appropriate note cards. And the reason that he waits is because it helps you separate the wheat from the chaff. And then, in the top right-hand corner of each card, you put a theme or a category that this card belongs to. If it can fit in multiple categories, then you duplicate the card. You make several versions of it. Now, to distill this is what we're looking at. You mark the passages and portions that resonate with you in the book. Then you write down thoughts that you have in the book margins, right? Or maybe on Post-it notes, and you put them on the page where you had the thought. I've seen that done before. You mark the pages, fold the corner, or use Post-it flags. And then a few weeks later, after it has simmered, after it is kind of just settled, the dust is settled kind of thing, you return to it and you transfer the highlights and thoughts to note cards. Why do you wait? Waiting gives your brain time to see what still resonates, right? And then you make a note card with a theme or a project. If it's a project, for example, a book that you're writing, you mark the section that the quote could go into, or the thought or the idea. If it's a card that fits multiple themes and projects, you duplicate the cards. I hope that you're kind of seeing how Heptabase could be a really, really great digital tool for this system, because it almost mimics this idea of boxes, of cards, and the cards being stored in a place, right? And in this case, the cards are stored in like this big plastic box. He goes into that in the article as well, and links out some different options. We'll get into how this translates to Heptabase in just a second. There's one other thing I want to point out. He says, I think it's important that the notes are not just about work. In mine, my two most important categories are life, which is mostly advice for myself, and another called me, where I put things that I think are important criticisms or places for improvement in my own life. By that, I mean stuff about dealing with parents, relationships, just little reminders that help. Now, I 1000% agree with this. It should not just be about your work, right? PKM is not just about growth, but about reflection. And for me, this looks like jotting down the funny things that the kids say, or how I messed up a phrase whenever I tried to say something, and or maybe a funny moment from that day. I'm always writing these things down because when I go back to them, I'm instantly taken back like it's a photo book, right? I'm instantly taken back if you're scrolling on Google Drive or Google Photos, and you come to that photo, and then bam, you're instantly taken back to that moment. And I do this with words, right? And so I write these little moments down. even the meaningful moments. And so that if I need a reminder of the good and the beautiful things in my life, I have a place that I can do that, right? Okay. So we've talked about who it's for and then what it is. Now we want to talk about how to achieve this system in Heptabase. In the Ryan Holiday note card system, the two main components are the note cards themselves and then the box that they go in. In Heptabase, we have the cards, right? And these are the individual cards and the card library over here on the left-hand side. Each of these are meta apps. The card library is a library of cards, and these are all individual note cards. Okay, think of that. These are all individual note cards. The card library is the whole big box of cards. You know what I'm saying? But there's a way to categorize these cards, and that is with whiteboards or tags. And I am advocating that you use both, because with whiteboards, you have the visual aspect, right? I can visually see all these different cards next to each other, and I can even make connections with drawing lines, or I can go into the card and make connections that way. But I'm able to visually see all the cards as if it was just spread out on a table, and I'm looking at all of them. That's one view. Another view that I have is with tags, and that's the table view, or sometimes the Kanban view, where you can actually look at the information in a more linear, just from top to bottom, and see all of the data or the information that you've collected in these various areas and themes and projects. So it's just multiple views of the same information, and I like that I can do that because it triggers different parts of your brain when you see things in different ways. So that's how it looks with Heptabase. All right. Now, step one, after you've marked up the book, okay, you create a whiteboard and name it the title of the book. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now because I have a book that I've been reading, and it's called The Charlotte Mason Companion. So I'm going to go to my workbench right here. My workbench is all the ideas that I'm thinking about, when it comes to my current thinking, okay, my current ideas that I want to ponder. So I'm going to create a new whiteboard. I can just double click. Right click, and then go to whiteboard, and it's going to by default name it today's date. I like to have things the same size. And then I can name it the title of the book. The Charlotte Mason Companion Guide. I think that's what it's called. Okay. Now, let's go back here in the system here. So we create a whiteboard and name it the title of the book. And this way you have a dedicated place for all your book notes, right? So you can place these cards in multiple whiteboards. Like we were talking about earlier with Ryan Holiday's system, he may have a card that will fit into multiple categories, and so he makes multiple versions of it. Well, we can make multiple versions of the card without actually having to do the work of it, right? So Heptabase allows you to put cards in multiple whiteboards. And so you may have multiple categories, and that's just fine. It works perfectly. And as I mentioned, this whiteboard is stored for me in the workbench whiteboard while I'm transferring the ideas. And then later on, it would be added to the appropriate whiteboard based on the topic. So I may put the whole whiteboard of the book, because I know the book that I'm reading is based on home education, in which that would fit inside of my value life of learning, which I will link in the description how I organize my notes. But essentially, this is the starting point of my knowledge. I categorize, I categorize mainly by values. Right, so these: a life of creating, a life well lived, a life of width, a life of learning. All of these are whiteboards, and they are my values of life. All right, so when I go into a whiteboard, for example, a life of creating, you can see I have these note cards that I still need to process, but I also have these whiteboards, these sub whiteboards inside of a life of creating, and they're all named specifically. And so I am able to, at a quick glance on my main map page, just have it simplified with just a few whiteboards. And then if I want to go deeper, I can, and go into the sub whiteboards of the value that I'm in. Okay. Again, there's a whole video that I did. I'll link it in the description on the knowledge maps. So now let me go back to the workbench. Let's see here. So I've created a whiteboard. Next step is to create a card for each highlight or thought or a quote. Right now, I prefer typing out each of the passages and the ideas and stuff because of the increased friction. Right, it forces me to transfer truly what resonates. Now, one of the ideas, just for our example in today's video, is our love of knowledge is dependent on how clearly ideas are presented to us. Clear ideas are found in living books. I want to save this as a single idea on a single note card. So I'm going to go back to the Charlotte Mason Companion Guide. This is an empty whiteboard because I've put nothing on it, but I want to add a card now. Okay, I want to add a note card. So I can double click, and I'm going to start typing the idea that I just mentioned. Our love of knowledge is dependent on how clearly ideas are presented to us. Clear ideas are found in living books. Every card starts out with an H1, a heading 1. If I want to change that, which normally I do, an H3, because a lot of my cards are just one single idea, and I feel like it's a little bit overkill to have an H1 on all of them. You can do whatever you like, whatever you visually prefer. It could just be text, something like that. Sometimes I will add a little bit of context on the bottom, but normally it's like as if I was writing this on a 4x6 note card, limited space, because I just want the single idea on this note card. Okay? All right. And I've made the title of the note card the idea. So when I go into my card library, this new idea here, this card, that's the title of it. Okay. If it happens to be a story that you want to remember, you can write a quick summary in a few words and make that the title. And then inside of the actual note, you could put, page 47 of the book. Forgot how to spell companion for a second. Okay, so yeah, if you want to do that, you can reference that. This takes time. It will take time. It's not as easy as let me highlight on my Kindle and then bam, it's actually right here in my highlights, which you can do. It is perfectly fine. Once you we'll go over that in a second. But this process here is meant to have some friction, so that it slows you down, so that you can spend more time with the ideas, especially quotes that other people said, exact word verbatim what somebody else said, and you write that down. You have the opportunity to kind of be in their shoes as they were writing this quote, as they were writing these words that now resonate with you. You have that opportunity. Let's go back to the highlights, right? If you're using a book that you can't mark up, like one that's from the library or that you're borrowing from a friend or something, you can create a single card in Heptabase, right? And write down all your notes and stuff inside of that card as you read them. I've done that actually for this book that I'm reading, because it's not my book. So normally I would have a card. I'll actually just show you. Charlotte. So you can see when I search, I have this whiteboard here, but I'm looking for a Charlotte Mason companion. Okay. This is the title of the book. So I need to update that because it doesn't have the word guide. But these are all the notes that I've taken. And if it's a quote, I visually make it a quote so that I can see that. I have a couple poems in here that I want to read through and look at more, think about. So I normally, if I were to, do it this way, and I couldn't mark up the book, then I would go in and I would find the ones that that really resonate, and turn them into cards. You can use the turn into card feature right here. All right, let's see here. Let's go back to the workbench and into the Ryan Holiday note card whiteboard that I have set up right here. We've talked about creating a whiteboard and naming it the title of the book. We've talked about creating a card for each highlight, which I've shown you an example of one card, right? So you would do that over and over and over again for all the cards that you have, or all the highlights that you have, and all the notes that you have. And then you want to add the cards to the appropriate theme or project. And you can use tags and whiteboards. And why? Well, we went over this earlier, but you have multiple views of the information. A theme could be a life area or a thought theme, or in my case, a value. Let's talk about adding to a whiteboard. I'm going to go back into the Charlotte Mason Companion Guide. So I have this card now on this whiteboard for the book. But what if I want to put it in a different whiteboard? How do I do that? Well, I don't want to just simply move it. Right? I can highlight it and I can go to move to right here. But it will take this out of this whiteboard and move it to another whiteboard. So what I can do, because I don't want to do that, I want to keep it in this whiteboard and add it to another one. So what I need to do is actually expand it to be a full view so that the only thing that I'm seeing right now is the card. And then while my cursor is in this card right here, I can hit Command M, and then it's going to bring up a search box. And here, it changed the language from move to add to whiteboard. Okay, so when I'm inside of a card and it's expanded to full view here, then that's when I can actually hit Command M and it will add it to another whiteboard. So in this case, a life of learning. So I'm going to add it to a life of learning. I've got a notification here, one added to the whiteboard life of learning. So now, on the metadata, I have this card, which still lives on this whiteboard. When I highlight it, now it tells me it appears in two whiteboards. I can click that, and it'll show me which one it's currently in with the with the check mark, and then the other one that it belongs to. So I can click into this card, and it is now I'm in a life of learning. Now, you don't want to click into this and try the Command M without expanding. You can see the language here changed from add to move. So when it says move to a whiteboard, it's going to move it from where it's currently at to another whiteboard. So if you want to add it to another whiteboard, you need to expand it using this icon right here, and then go in, put your cursor in there, and hit Command M. And it will change it to add to whiteboard. Okay, let's go to the workbench, back to the Ryan Holiday whiteboard. Okay, so we've talked about adding it to the whiteboard. Now the other thing is tags. You can add tags for each card that you have. or you can highlight multiple cards and add tags, right? So let me go ahead and add another quote from the same book here. I'm going to go back into the Charlotte Mason Companion Guide, and I want to add a card. I can double click, or I can right click and do card. So this quote is: "The finest of all fine arts is the art of doing good, and yet it is the least cultivated." And this is by T. DeWitt Talmage. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm going to make this a heading 3. If you wanted to, you could do a quote here, turn it into a quote, like a visual quote with a heading 3 styling right there. So that way you know that this is a quote, or you could use quotation marks if you wanted to, however you want to do it. All right. So we talked about how, you can highlight multiple cards and add a tag to them. Well, if I highlight these two right here, there are these 3 dots that come up. I can click that, and then I can hit Manage Tags. And here, I can search for the tag, A Life of Learning. Now, the tag, A Life of Learning, has been added to both of these cards. And if I go into the metadata, you can see it right here, tags, Life of Learning, and tag, Life of Learning. Now, when I tag personally, I'm tagging at the value level, not the sub whiteboard level. Like, I'm tagging just with a few things, like a life of learning, a life of creating, just maybe 5 different tags that I would have on this. And then in the whiteboards themselves, like I mentioned in the creativity whiteboard, I have the sub whiteboards that these cards belong to, where they are related. And then if I need to, I can grab those and start creating something. So this whole system is designed so that you can create, so that you can output, not so that you can just hoard information and not do anything with it. And what I mean by create is you could create by writing an article. You could create by writing a book, right? You can send out a newsletter. All of those are great things. But there's also just a simple conversation with a friend, right? So maybe you go to coffee with somebody and you exchange ideas. And so, if you want to go to coffee with someone and you're, for me, if I go to my workbench here, these are all the ideas that I'm thinking about. And they are these little individual boxes, like Ryan Holiday's system. They're individual boxes that I have my note cards in. And if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I want to start talking about what I've been thinking about, well, I've been thinking about this idea of storing up or laying up the Word of God in your heart, right? And memorization and meditation. What are those things? And what are the scriptures that relate to those things, right? I have a way with Heptabase to instantly go into this whiteboard where it's just this information on storing up and laying, on memorizing the Word of God, essentially. Okay. And I have all the connections of these ideas laid out with the lines, and then the individual cards I can see the connections as well. I can see what whiteboards they're attached to or stored on. So while I'm in a conversation with somebody, I have these ideas that I can pull up and be like, this is what I've been thinking about. How we need to wonderfully delight and carefully meditate on the living Word of God. And what does that actually mean? And I can talk about the scriptures that it relates to, all this kind of stuff. Or if I want to talk about, the ingredients of a well-lived day, right? I came across this email from somebody that I admire, and he talked about how every day you want to engage, create, and learn. Janice, I can't remember his last name, but he is a visual. He teaches you how to visually learn, and maybe I want to talk about that with somebody, or maybe I want to write about it. The point with all of this is that I have these ideas that I can think about inside of Heptabase and I can tease out, but also I have a way to share. I have an easy way to pull these up on my phone as well, on the mobile app for Heptabase. And then if I want to, zoom out a little bit, because these are pretty niche ideas about certain things, I could go into my map, and I can go to, man, what am I thinking about lately with, a life of with. What's been on my heart lately, or what's been resonating lately? I have these note cards that I can go through. And in an instant, if I wanted to, I could take this card, Boxes to Zombies. Surround yourself with people who can show you what's possible. I can take that card and I can go write about it right now if I wanted to. Right? It's just a well of information that is so important and so meaningful to you that you have a way to create with it. Right? So I hope all of this was helpful for you. I hope that it was inspiring and challenging for you, and how you can use Heptabase, and how also this note card system from Ryan Holiday is a really neat system, and it's really simple, and it fits nicely within Heptabase. If you have any questions on that system or on Heptabase, let me know in the comments, and I look forward to hanging out with you in the next video.